A child solved it and laughed. But when the maid's daughter saved a billion-dollar tower from collapsing, every smirk in the room disappeared. Khalid Alahim's laughter thundered through the glass-walled boardroom, echoing high above the Dubai skyline. His diamond cufflinks caught the sun as he pointed at the flickering tower model on the screen. "3 world-renowned firms have failed me," he sneered. "And you expect me to believe a child holds the answer?" Chloe Hayes sat quietly, her sketchbook resting on her knees. Every eye in the room pinned her down, executives smirking, investors whispering in Arabic, her mother shrinking with shame at her side. Khalid leaned forward, voice sharp as steel. "Fine. Prove it. Solve the problem that has humiliated the greatest minds on earth, and I'll give you $100 million. But fail." He paused, letting silence strangle the air. "And you will never set foot in this tower again." The room went silent. The hum of the building itself seemed to pulse like a heartbeat. Before we dive in, tell us in the comments where you're watching from. We love seeing how far these stories travel. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button. A building doesn't have a soul, but it does have a voice. And this one was screaming. In the heart of Dubai's desert, a city built on impossible dreams, the Oasis Tower rose like a shard of glass and steel aimed at the heavens. It was the tallest, most luxurious, most advanced residential skyscraper in the world. To Khalid Al-Fahim, its billionaire creator, it was more than a project. It was his monument. At 52, Khalid's reputation was forged in steel and ambition. He had conquered London, Tokyo, and New York. But the Oasis was meant to crown his empire. Its penthouses sold for 9 figures. Its lobbies were museums of marble and rare art. Even its air was filtered and perfumed with desert rose. But for 3 months, perfection carried a secret. The tower hummed. At first a faint tremor, barely felt. Then louder, deeper, until crystal chandeliers swayed, hairline cracks spread across marble floors, and a $10 million glass pane shattered without warning. The Oasis was sick. Jessica Hayes, a maid in the tower, knew its hallways better than anyone. For 2 years she'd pushed her cart across polished floors, invisible to the wealthy who lived above her. She endured it for her daughter, Chloe, a quiet 12-year-old who trailed her mother with a sketchbook, filling its pages with the world she observed. While others ignored the hum, Chloe listened. She pressed her hand to the walls, eyes closed, as if hearing a secret only she could understand. The crisis escalated. 3 elite engineering firms had been flown in: Germany, Japan, America. They ran every test, every simulation. Each ended the same. "We don't know." According to science, the tower should have been silent. The impossible sound mocked the brightest minds alive. Khalid's fury grew legendary. $150 million, he roared at his architects. "That is what I've lost this month." Residents breaking leases, buyers fleeing. The press calls it the humming tower of terror. His pride, more than money, was bleeding out. That same afternoon, Jessica cleaned the boardroom after another disastrous meeting. Chloe sat by the window, sketchbook open. The hum rattled her teeth. She didn't sketch the sea, but the tower itself, its twisting form, the decorative fins that wrapped its frame. Her pencil traced the wind, arrows showing invisible currents flowing around the building. She remembered her grandfather's words. Every structure tells a story. Don't look at what it is, look at what it does. That evening, an emergency inquest began. Saudi investors arrived, furious, joined by Dr. Eleanor Reed, a legend in structural dynamics. She had stabilized skyscrapers in Tokyo and bridges in storm-battered Scotland. If she was here, the crisis was life or death. Inside the boardroom, Preston Finch, the American architect, stumbled through another theory about soil resonance and microtremors. Dr. Reed cut him off with a single question. "Have you considered the von Karman vortex effect?" The room froze. Preston blinked. His team exchanged blank looks. It was advanced fluid dynamics, something dismissed as irrelevant months ago. From the hall, Chloe's head shot up. She'd seen that phrase in her grandfather's old book about how wind spirals off structures, forming invisible whirlpools of air. She looked down at her sketch, arrows wrapping the tower exactly that way. Before anyone could speak, the tower shuddered violently. Lights flickered. A jagged crack split one of the enormous windows. Gasps filled the room, investors shouting in Arabic, panic spreading. Khalid rose like a storm. "Enough," he thundered. "Finch, you're finished. All of you, out of my building." His gaze swept the chaos, then landed on Jessica standing frozen in the hall, and beside her, Chloe, clutching her sketchbook. Jessica balanced a tray of coffee cups frozen under Khalid Alahim's glare. His eyes, dark with rage and humiliation, dropped to the small blonde girl sitting beside her. "This is what my project has become," he sneered. "A circus of incompetence, with cleaners for an audience." His hand cut the air toward Jessica and Chloe. "Dead weight. Distractions we can no longer afford." The words struck Jessica like a blow. She reached for Chloe's arm, desperate, to vanish into invisibility. But Chloe didn't move. Her heart pounded, not with fear but clarity. She saw her mother's shame, the engineer's despair, and she heard the building screaming. She stood. "Sir," her voice was soft but steady, "it's not the ground, it's the wind. You're listening for a hum, but you should be listening for a whistle." Silence crashed over the boardroom. 200 eyes turned. Investors, engineers, the formidable Dr. Eleanor Reed, and Khalid himself, staring at the maid's daughter. His fury twisted into a cruel smile. He saw an escape, a spectacle to deflect his humiliation. What he didn't see was that Chloe Hayes was not insignificant. Her gift began years earlier, in her grandfather Walter's dusty workshop. Walter Hayes, a combat engineer in Vietnam, had built bridges under fire and stabilized dams at home. To the world, he was an ordinary civil servant. To Chloe, he was a magician who taught her to see structures differently. He never spoke down to her. He showed her bridges as battles of tension and compression. He strummed a guitar string to explain resonance, told her the tale of the Tacoma, Narrows Bridge, the day the wind sang a structure to death. His lessons weren't about formulas, they were about listening, about respect for forces no one else noticed. When Walter died, Chloe inherited more than dusty textbooks with his notes. She inherited his way of seeing the hidden systems of the world, and now, in the boardroom, she felt him beside her. She wasn't just a girl. She was Walter Hayes's granddaughter, and this tower was begging her to read its story. Khalid stepped closer, looming over her. His voice dripped mockery. "Well, well, an expert among us. A child who cleans floors believes she can solve what the greatest minds cannot." Nervous laughter rippled. Executives looked away. But Dr. Reed did not laugh. She studied Chloe's eyes, clear, unshaken. She uncapped her pen, watching. Khalid spread his arms like a ringmaster. "Then prove it, explain it, solve it. My $2 billion tower is your puzzle. You claim it's the wind, fine." He leaned down, whispering loud enough for all to hear. "Do it, and I'll give you $100 million. A gasp rippled through the room. The number was absurd, taunting. "But when you fail, and you will fail, your mother is not just fired. You will both be banned from this property for life. I'll make sure no one in Dubai hires her again." The trap was set. Khalid would not be seen as a man undone, but as a leader, putting an arrogant child in her place. Then Dr. Reed stood. Her quiet presence silenced the room. "I will act as adjudicator," she said firmly. "This challenge will be measured on scientific grounds." For the first time, Khalid hesitated. Reed's authority gave legitimacy to his cruel game. Investors leaned in, intrigued. A Saudi prince nodded. "Excellent. Let us see this unconventional approach." Khalid's control slipped, but he had no choice. "Fine," he snapped. Then, gesturing to the cameras, he added, "We will live stream it." The world expected to see my perfect tower unveiled. Instead, they will see what happens when a child's fantasy collides with reality. Within minutes, the feed was live across LinkedIn, Twitter, and YouTube. The title was brutal: unqualified opinion, the $100 million challenge, and through it all, Chloe stood still. She wasn't thinking about money or humiliation, only the voice of the tower, whispering secrets only she could hear. Chloe wasn't thinking about the thousands watching the live stream. She wasn't thinking about Khaled's cruel smirk or the investors waiting for her humiliation. She was thinking about the Tacoma Narrows Bridge, about her grandfather's guitar string humming under his calloused fingers, about how this building was singing its deadly note. Dr. Eleanor Reed crossed the boardroom, her sensible shoes whispering against the carpet. She knelt so she could look Chloe in the eye. Her voice was low, meant only for the girl. "You are under no obligation to do this. This is cruel and unfair. You can walk away right now and no one would blame you." Chloe's blue eyes didn't waver. "Ma'am, my grandfather taught me you can't fix a problem until you respect it. Nobody here is respecting this building. They're afraid of it. But it's not whistling anymore. It's screaming. And if we don't listen, it's going to tear itself apart." Dr. Reed studied her for a long moment. What she saw wasn't fantasy or childish arrogance. It was the same steel she had seen in the best engineers alive. She rose, turned to the stunned room, and announced, "Very well. The challenge is accepted. Let's begin." The boardroom shifted. Moments ago it had been a tribunal. Now it was an arena. Investors and engineers stepped back, cameras zoomed in, and the digital clock on the wall became a countdown to something absurd and deadly serious. Khaled gestured with mock grandeur. "The stage is yours, little expert. The world is watching. Don't waste our time." But Chloe didn't hear him. The jeers, the cameras, even her mother's white-knuckled terror, they all faded. There was only the puzzle. Calmly she walked to the refreshment cart, took a crystal glass and a bottle of water, and carried them to the center of the room. Jessica's heart hammered. What was her daughter doing? Chloe poured water until the glass was 3/4 full. The engineers smirked. Preston Finch shook his head. "A party trick?" Khaled sneered. "If you're thirsty, my staff can assist." Chloe ignored him. She pointed. "Look." At first, nothing. Then, as the tower groaned again, the water's surface trembled. Concentric ripples shimmered in perfect rhythm. "Just vibration," a junior architect muttered. "No," Reed snapped, eyes narrowing. "Look at the consistency. That's not chaos. That's frequency." Chloe nodded. "It's a note. Too high to hear properly, buried under the low rumbles, like a dog whistle. The hum is only the symptom. The disease is the whistle." Murmurs filled the room. Investors leaned closer. The concept was disarmingly simple and devastating. Khaled scoffed. "This is childish. Where's your proof?" Chloe met his gaze. The architectural blueprints, the wind tunnel simulations, the full aerodynamic report. The demand stunned the room. Finch sputtered. "Confidential. Terabytes of data. You wouldn't even know how." Dr. Reed cut him off, her voice like steel. "Your team failed to interpret that very data. The girl has presented a testable hypothesis. I'm ordering the files be shown, unless you're afraid she'll see what you missed." Finch turned crimson but gestured to his assistant. Moments later, the massive boardroom screen lit up with the glowing 3D wireframe of the Oasis Tower. Chloe stepped forward, eyes scanning with unnerving speed. She asked the technician to isolate the exterior fins. Then she pointed. "These," she said. "Hundreds of identical blades, spaced exactly 2.8 meters apart. Perfectly uniform." Her voice grew heavier, echoing her grandfather's lessons. "You didn't build a skyscraper. You built the largest flute in the world." The silence was absolute. She traced the profile with her finger. The desert wind passes the fins. They create vortices, tiny whirlpools of air. Each fin sings the same note, a high C sharp. Alone, it's nothing. Together, they amplify each other. The entire tower is a giant tuning fork. The truth hit like thunder. The flaw wasn't construction, it was design. Finch collapsed into a chair, face in his hands. Khaled went pale. Investors whispered in disbelief. An engineer muttered, trembling. "To fix it, we'd have to remove every fin, shut down the tower. Years of work, hundreds of millions." Chloe shook her head. No, that's the hard way. My grandpa always said the best solution is the simplest one you haven't thought of yet. She pointed back to the screen. You don't have to stop the music. You just have to change the song. The problem wasn't strength. It wasn't steel. It was song. The perfect, uninterrupted flow of air over the fins is the enemy, Chloe explained, her voice calm in the heavy silence. Break the flow and you break the harmony. You end the song. She walked to the towering screen, plucked up a marker, and with steady hands sketched a simple line across the edge of a fin. Here, small baffles, narrow strips, 2 centimeters high. Not on every fin, just enough in a random pattern. First, skip 2, add 1, skip 1. Random, unpredictable. Each fin will vibrate at a slightly different frequency. They won't sing in unison anymore, they'll cancel each other out. She capped the marker. When the whistle stops, the hum disappears. The building goes quiet. The solution was breathtaking in its simplicity, an $80 fix for a $200 million problem. Wisdom born not in a classroom but in her grandfather's workshop, listening to steel and wood sing their truths. The boardroom froze. Engineers stared at her, minds racing through the equations. Investors murmured in Arabic, awe replacing scorn. By the wall, Jessica wept openly, not from fear, but from pride so immense it nearly broke her. At last, Dr. Reed stood tall, her notebook full of furious calculations. In 45 years of engineering, I have never seen a more elegant diagnosis. The girl is correct. Her solution is brilliant. She looked at Chloe, her voice softening. Walter Hayes would have been so proud. The live stream exploded. What had begun as mockery was now reverence. Screenshots of Chloe's sketch spread like wildfire. Across the globe, millions whispered the same truth. The maid's daughter had saved the tower. Khalid Alahim stood like stone, emotions battling across his face. Rage, humiliation, disbelief, and finally, awe. He had staged a public execution. Instead, the world had witnessed a coronation. His voice broke the silence. Run a simulation. The engineers scrambled. Fingers flew over keyboards. A new model of the tower appeared, this time with Chloe's random baffles. The data streamed in. Every eye locked on the screen. Where there had once been a terrifying spike in harmonic resonance, now there was nothing, just silence, a scatter of meaningless vibrations. It works, the lead engineer whispered, stunned. It's completely neutralized. The room erupted. Applause. Cheers, shouts of admiration. Dr. Reed clapped, beaming. Engineers who had mocked Chloe now looked at her with something like devotion. At the center of the storm, Chloe remained calm. Her eyes searched only for her mother. Jessica rushed forward, arms wrapping around her daughter, sobs of pride muffled in pale blonde hair. Khalid watched them. His tower had been saved. His empire had been humiliated. And yet, watching the quiet dignity of the child who had undone him, awe replaced anger. But the reckoning wasn't over. He had promised $100 million. And the world was watching. The cheers died. The silence returned, heavier than before. Every camera turned toward Khalid. His choice was brutal: pay and immortalize his humiliation, refuse and be branded a liar forever. Slowly, he stepped forward. The cameras tracked him like hawks. He stopped before Chloe and her mother, the billionaire and the cleaner's daughter, standing eye to eye in a balance of power the world had never imagined. You have a name? His voice was stripped of its booming bravado. Chloe Hayes, she said, steady. He nodded once, sharply. Rashid, he called, eyes locking on his aide. Get Minister Alja on the line. Set up a blind trust with the Swiss National Bank. Beneficiary, Chloe Hayes. Principal amount, $100 million. A wave of gasps swept the room. The livestream chat exploded in disbelief. Khaled raised his hand for silence. The trust will be independent. Dr. Reed, I ask you to oversee it. Upon her 21st birthday, Chloe will receive full control. Until then, all her living and educational expenses will be paid, without limit. It was brilliant. He had honored his word with impeccable formality, transforming himself from humbled fool into magnanimous patron. The debt was paid. The legend was born. It wasn't a defeat. It was an investment in genius. Khalid Alahim ended the wager not with silence, but with spectacle. Chloe received a $100 million trust, and Jessica, once a maid, was named Director of Structural Oversight, with a penthouse on the 100th floor and a $500,000 salary. For a moment, Jessica feared it was revenge, but Khalid's voice carried no cruelty. Your daughter taught me the details the top never sees. From now on, you will be our eyes and ears. Within days, German engineers swarmed the Oasis Tower, installing the tiny metal baffles Chloe had designed. At Dr. Reed's insistence, Chloe served as consultant, hard hat perched on her head. She corrected an error even the lead engineer had overlooked, her quiet authority silencing any doubts. On the third evening, as the desert sun sank in gold and violet, the boardroom filled once more. The infamous glass of water waited. Outside, the wind rose, yet inside, there was no hum, no vibration. The water remained perfectly still. Silence. Peace. Relief spread across Khalid's face. She didn't just save my tower, he whispered. She gave it back its soul. The story spread across the globe. Business schools dissected it, engineers studied it, and news anchors hailed it as a modern fable. The maid's daughter had humbled billionaires and reshaped a skyline. Chloe never chased status. The trust fund gave her freedom. Guided by Dr. Reed, she traveled the world, studying for the love of discovery. Years later, she founded the Walter Hayes Foundation, giving gifted children the chance to solve problems once thought impossible. Jessica, now Director Hayes, became the heart of the tower. She treated every guard and cleaner with respect, transforming its culture from fear to pride. Khalid, too, was changed, still ambitious but humbled, learning to listen to those who built his dreams. Years later, when asked her secret, Chloe said simply, "It's about perspective. Everyone looks up at the sky, but the truth is on the ground, if you're humble enough to listen."